Hello and welcome to the Autistic Tidbits and Tangents podcast. I'm Maya Todale. I'm an autistic psychologist, and my co-host is Kara Diamond. She's an autistic teacher. And today we are joined by Maddy Dever, who is an autistic adult and advocate, a non-binary person, and wheelchair user due to a spinal cord injury. And also is a parent of 5 children, 4 of them being autistic. And so we thought today was a great day to talk about parenting and autism. Maddy, is there anything that you want to add to your introduction?
I love being on podcasts. I love reading, and I love music, and I love sharing all that with my kids.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'll have some questions at the end about young adult literature because I know you're really, really passionate about that, but we'll save that till the very end.
Welcome to Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.
Candid conversations between autistic off-hour professionals.
Cool. Trigger warnings for this episode include discussions of ableism, as always, mentions of system stress/trauma, mentions of suicidal ideation, depression, anxiety, and sensory overload and meltdowns.
Now, I'm really curious what it is like being autistic and also parenting, and especially when there are competing needs.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the interesting thing I was thinking about this morning as I was getting up. My journey to getting my diagnosis really revolves around my kids and them getting diagnosis, and that me seeing a lot of my experiences as a child in each of their experiences, some more, some less.
Yes.
And so many people saying, "Hey, have you thought that maybe you're autistic too?" Yeah. I'm like, okay. And when that builds up, it to the point where it's like, it makes a huge difference. But I think having any child that's autistic, the journey with that child, your journey as a parent, is one of challenge, one of stress, especially dealing with schools, one of joy as you see the world looked at in a different light as your child grows. And autistic kids may have a different progression in how they grow, but they all do. But having 4 kids that are all autistic, and in various places along the autism color wheel of the spectrum, I was thinking this morning, the challenge is in balancing their different needs that are sometimes similar and sometimes conflicting. And the thing that I've had to realize that my oldest son is 23 years old, and my youngest autistic kid is 14. There's different times where one child's needs are the priority to focus on.
Yes.
And I think that can be harder for the other kids, but there's an ebb and flow in every kid's life. And when you have when one kid's exhibiting a lot of challenge in particular areas, I feel naturally you have to sort of go to that child, spend the time to help them through that hump, and then everything sort of equilibrizes again. That can be harder for a child who didn't know they were autistic until they got into their adult years. One of my kids had a self-discovery into the autism. I mean, she was diagnosed with like so many other things. We used to call her the poster child for ADHD, and I used to say she's the child that had that had the biggest problem with transitions and change. Well, it makes sense now. I have 5 kids. I have a son, I have three daughters and a non-binary child, and so girls and autism, which I'm sure you guys have a little bit of experience with, just a tad. Yeah, it's autism appears differently, and especially when what we've found is a lot of girls, there's so many other diagnoses that people want to put on or try on first. Definitely. Because they don't understand, if you don't have behaviors, if you don't have like wild tantrums, well, how can they be autistic? If they seem to be able to socialize, somewhat in groups, are they really autistic? If they don't have this, the stereotypical communications issues, are they really autistic? And because we're looking at autism through a deficit lens, we tend to miss the traits, because we're looking for deficits. Yeah. We really need to be looking for traits. And if you look for traits, you can sort of you can then see the gaps. But girls tend to sort of somehow hide, mask, just get by until there's grade 5, 6, 7, 8, when the gap between them and their peers comes a little bit harder to miss. Yeah. And which is also, even girls who are diagnosed, this is when we have, when puberty hits and everything changes and girls make cliques. And if you're not in a clique, your mental, your identity and everything is changing. You may have lost the friends you've had. You don't have a clue how to start to get new ones. And, then whatever skills you've gained with masking, or just, learning to latch on, has to be undone again. And there's a similar pattern 18 to 24, because again, everything changes. Yeah. And you're having to create structure on your own. Because high school there's structure, and you may have excelled with that structure, and college, university, it's all blown away, and you have to come up with your own structure. And so I find these, especially for girls, these are two periods of times where we find that we get a lot more diagnoses, because the whatever the skills they've been able to do to mask or just get through are blown away, and they have to be rebuilt either by themselves or with help from others.
Yeah. There's definitely periods of children's lives where they will crash. And as you say, like parents with multiple autistic children, it's almost like, okay, that one's been through that period. Oh, the second one had that same dive. Oh no, here comes number 3. Well, at least now I know what to expect. So do you have that experience of like, because you have 5 children, seeing the bombs coming before they explode?
Absolutely. I'm aware of them. I mean, I'm aware of them to the point where I can help other parents, be forewarned, especially when they have a 9 or 10-year-old girl, say, hey, just kidding. The next couple of years, you're going to have some issues. But, I was prepared for it. However, there's internal preparation, and then there's experiencing it. And it's, the biggest challenge for parents is they cannot affect change for what their kids are experiencing at school. They can try to be proactive in stuff, but you're ending up mostly reacting to the things that they're experiencing. Yes. And watching your kids go through, especially a happy-go-lucky kid having significant self-image challenges within a year is hard to watch, and you can do everything to be alongside them, but there are internal struggles that sometimes just have to be gone through, and it's hard to watch, and you can't fix their peer issues. You can help them try to navigate it and find new ones. And just one of the things that I told my youngest about a year and a half ago, because she was so upset that because she couldn't do some things that other people could do, and just felt just like that she was worthless. And I told her that every single person in your class has an issue like this that they feel. There's something that they can't handle. Every single one of them. And, you're seeing them through a lens because of how you're feeling. They're seeing you. They might see something about you that they wish they had, because they don't have it. And I said to her, every time you go into a room, you light up the room. Nobody can be upset around you. You have a caring heart, and you go to seek people out and help them. It's just, I know. It's like, that's
amazing.
That's the special thing about you that nobody else necessarily has. But other people see that in you. Now they have they may have something that you see that you appreciate about them, and there's a challenge behind them that they're trying to work through. And so that's what I'm trying to do. That's all I can do to help her through it. It's a struggle. I mean, I remember the struggle that I had around the same time. It's an middle school years is an awful time.
It's so difficult.
And everything changes in you, and in your school environment changes. And where do you latch onto?
And I changed schools multiple times at that time. Yes, you know what I'm talking about, Maddy. And I got emotional when you were describing it, because you described my experience, only I never told my parents the extent of what I was going. I didn't want to add to their burden, especially knowing my younger brother has higher support needs. And I don't like to make anyone feel sad. So to be I'm being so badly bullied that I'm writing suicidal poetry and I'm doing all this stuff, or I've just resigned that no one will like me and I'm just going to focus on academics until I get to high school. I wouldn't tell them those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is a time period where a lot of children do go through a crisis and develop anxiety or develop depressions or, all of these things. And I remember going through that myself as well. And I think even as adults, sometimes we still have those periods where we forget that other people are masking too.
Yeah.
The curating of people's lives that go on social media, and even just when we go out in public, it's like we forget, I think, as autistic people, and I do think neurotypical people forget too, sometimes that other people are suffering as well. They just don't show it, and we're not showing it. So how would others
anyone know?
Yeah. And I think having those discussions with your children and helping them to recognize, exactly as you said, the other kids are going through hard things too. And they probably think you're amazing. And
that's the key. It's not just telling people other people are going through this too. It's I look at the world through a very strength-based way. That's the way I try to live my life. That's the way I try to talk. It's the way I try to get people to look at disability, where you start off with, what are the things you can do? What are the things that your areas where you have strengths, where there's some positivity, and then you don't put away the things that are challenging you. And I use the word challenge instead of deficit stuff, but you find the help and the supports to deal with those challenges. But, you focus on the things you can do. You need both sides of things in order to have, to walk through a person, just say it's going to be okay. Doesn't help. You talk about the things that are good, you address the things that are challenging, and then you can say other people have challenges and other people have strengths. You have challenges, but here are your strengths. And this is not the way I used to live my life. Now, it's something that I think in the last 10 years, especially in the last 8 years, is something that I've been able to do. And I look at right now. I was in a car accident 2 years ago, and it damaged my spine, damaged my hip, damaged it a lot. Life changing is the only way to describe it. I've lost the use of my left hand, and I have little control over my right thumb. So I've got 4 fingers, I have a brain, and a mouth that works, and I can do a lot with that. And I've I focus most days on the fact that these are things I can do. And so the days that come that I'm not getting much done,
Yeah.
I have to, accept that my body can't do more than I'm giving it. I'm able to do stuff. I'm still able to contribute. That's great. But I also, what's really important is that we have value because we exist. Our value isn't what we can or can't do. It's because we are. And, we need to value what we can do, but our value itself doesn't come from that. And, I've had to keep reminding myself on the difficult days that it really doesn't matter what I'm able to produce. I'm thankful that I'm able to produce some things, and I'm going to focus on these things. But days, there are days where I can't do anything. There's days, where there's regressions and challenges.
Yeah.
And I try to help my kids, with that. And it's hard at their age. This is not an easy concept, but I'm hoping that by modeling this, that they'll be able to go through their darker challenges, and at least when those challenges clear up a little bit, that they'll be able to take that challenge as part of their past experience. It's not easy to be a teen, and it's not easy being green.
I think it's such an important lesson that you're teaching your children, that we are important because we are, not because of what we produce. And I really do want to emphasize that just one more time, because I've seen several teen clients of mine that come in with severe depressions and with suicidal ideation. And what they're telling me is, how am I ever going to have a job? How am I ever going to make money? Yeah. And in that way contribute to society, and trying to dismantle, and I'm going to get a little bit political if that's okay.
Neoliberalism!
Trying to dismantle the capitalistic idea that we are only worth the money we make, or the monetary value we produce in society, is so hard. And I spend hours upon hours with these teenage clients of mine. And I've struggled with this myself, because my autism and my additional diagnoses do create a disability where I am not able to work full time. I'm not able to produce that monetary value that society tells me that I should.
Yeah.
and dealing with that, and trying to come to terms with, we have other values. We contribute other things to society, to the people around us. And that is worth sometimes probably more.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, this is not just a neurodivergent thing. I just finished teaching graduate level teacher candidates, and so much of my job is just saying, take the time that you need, take a break. I would rather you not do this task and take 30 minutes and go for a run. And I have to actively challenge them to let go of this notion that their worth is tied to productivity, and that self-care is a professional responsibility and is so much more important than work. And I hope that with their students, they also say, your life is more important than school.
Well, you think about it on airplanes, every time you go on there, they talk about the masks. They say, put it on yourself first, and then help others, like your kids and whatnot. Because, if you don't take care of yourself, very quickly, you can't take care of anybody else. And it's funny. We value ourselves too much, or we don't value ourselves at all in the same breath. Right. We feel entitled to the wrong things. And it's the part, like, there's a period of time where my one of my tween kids was just having trouble sleeping, and would just get up and do stuff. And I tried to, stay awake, to just, just get that much longer before I knew that they were definitely asleep, and it was wrecking my days. And I got to a point where I need to prioritize my sleep so I can help her during the day. Because if I don't prioritize my sleep, like, she's not getting anything and destroying things. Okay. So she's just, reading, listening to music, and just, getting snacks, whatever. I need to prioritize my sleep so I can help her during the day. And then if I can keep things, if I can create a routine that's going to help her, we can find a way of dealing with her sleep. But if I'm not sleeping, she's not sleeping. It's a spiral where you get out of control.
A vicious cycle. And it's going to make the both of you deteriorate. Yes. And again, you're bringing up a point that I spend so much time telling my clients, like, parents, you need to take care of yourself, because how are you going to help your child if you are,
racked with anxiety and like vibrating like this all the time? That rubs off. Like, we pick this up.
But also the burnout. The burnout where the parent is constantly tired. There's still the anxiety. There's still that vibrating energy where everything is just unsure and uncertain and everything is horrible. But there's also that sense as a child that my parent isn't here because mentally they're checked out. Because they're so tired. And that creates more issues.
And the child that's not going through the other children in the family who aren't experiencing the heightened need at the time. This is, when parents frazzle themselves, and I say themselves because we can make the choice to fix this. But when we get frazzled, our ability to parent the other children and give them anything, it diminishes, because we're, if we're in a heightened challenge, you spend, let's say, 50% with one kid and 25% the other two. Right. You can get that back. But the more frazzled you get, that you're actually starting to spend 60, 70, 80%. But that 80% with that one kid is actually, about, 20% of instead of 80%. Like, it just flipped, because as you get tired out, your children, especially autistic kids, we tend to, some autistic kids need to see the structure in the ways they see people's people behave around them. If they see agitation, they're going to respond to that agitation. If they see exhaustion, they're going to respond to that exhaustion. If they see happiness, they may respond to that happiness. Because newsflash, news story, breaking news: autistics can be empathetic, but our empathy is
hyper empathetic sometimes.
Exactly. We get, because the issue is, we can't deal with the emotions that we're seeing and experiencing. And so it doesn't look like we're empathetic, but we are actually hyper empathetic, and we absorb the feelings of others, and we take them on ourselves, but then we can't describe them, or we just get stuck, and
or it becomes a shutdown.
Exactly.
Or an internalization that I am causing this distress in my parents. There's something wrong with me. I need so much fixing.
Self-blame. And it manifests in so many ways. Like, I was just telling Kara that I was dealing with this very thing today, because I got an email from a really good friend of mine a couple of days ago they're in a really bad place, and they were canceling something that we had planned for a really long time. And I spent days, feeling the pain of what they're going through and not knowing how to best support them in that moment. Because even though I'm a psychologist, I can do my work in the room, but when I'm outside of that room, I forget how to do things. And like, replying to their email, I'm in so much pain because I'm thinking of how much pain they're in. And so but I was locked, I couldn't reply for days. Just got stuck. And for kids, it's so much worse because they don't know how to get themselves out of that groove. And as a parent, trying to help them get unstuck is such a challenge, isn't it?
It's trying, with kids, what I have realized is There is in any time a kid is stuck, or any time a kid's acting, and any time a kid's doing things that just sort of doesn't ascribe to the moment, there's two things that I need to do. First of all, well, three things. I need to be patient. That's the key. That's the key to parenting. Patience. If you don't have patience, especially with autistics, if you don't have patience, it's going to be more challenging. There's what is the kid's need? What's the need that's behind all this? All right, you need to unpack this and try to understand what's the kid missing, needing, looking for, and then what's the trigger, right? And the trigger and the need don't necessarily have to be the same thing, and they can be sort of contrary. But like if our need is to support people, support our friends through something, right? But we're experiencing their massive emotions, and we're then amplifying it or getting stuck by it. I mean, most people will think of the trigger and not look at the need and how to unpack, because if you understand that it's somebody else's emotions that are in the way, we need to be able to be helped unwind the twine between what's ours, what's theirs, and
yes,
and then come into come to how can we move forward with how we feel. And so much of the time with autistics, we tend to just get evaluated by what we see. Like it's the tip of the iceberg, what we're seeing, and when it doesn't make sense, when it doesn't match up, I find this is the area where I really try to talk to neurotypical parents who don't have that experience of being autistic. Again, patience, which can be very hard when you're seeing emotions flowing around, but you gotta. Okay, this is a quote from Lion King 1.5. Look beyond what you see.
I love it.
I'm wondering if you have any examples, because I don't know, this is something I see a lot, but when there are mismatched profiles in the house, and very stereotypically, what I tend to see is a father that has less of a social profile, less of that expressive empathy. Perhaps he has a lot of empathy, inside his own experience, but doesn't know how to show it. And then the autistic daughter, who has that immensely social and very people-pleasing profile, and she's trying her best to make everybody happy in the house, and it doesn't work. So I see that a lot. But I'm wondering if maybe, with so mmany autistic children in one household,
what's that like?
you've probably seen more examples.
So, okay, I'll give you the example. I have two sets of two kids, two sets of from one parent, one mother, two sets for two kids from another mother, and so there are so in my second batch of two, hot off the press, one is loud, one is quiet. One is exuberantly outgoing and will do then think. The other will think and then do.
Yes.
One needs to have stuff all around. The other needs to have, really can't handle clutter. Will make clutter, but can't handle clutter. There's a big difference there.
Yes,
the other
there
one,
is.
Yes, there is.
Yes. The one is one really loves night and darkness. The other one really loves day and lightness. Like they're
just opposites.
They're very much opposites. And it's only in the last year or two that like, okay, so the younger is always desperate for the older child's attention. It's beginning to have, like, as they're getting through going through the teen years themselves now. It's getting better. It was never bad, but it's definitely interesting thing is the older child is desperate for the attention of in the first block, the older sister. But in the first two, right? In the first two, one is again, one is very outgoing, one is very mellow, one is the common thread through all my kids, music is strong. Music and the love, the love of, well, except for one kid, the love of reading is strong. One kid just doesn't like history, doesn't care about politics. It's like, how are you my child? It's like you have my sense of humor. You have so many things that you and I do things identically, but this area here is a complete mystery to me. How I say something about history and you go, whatever. It's like, is this an act or is this you?
It can also be, that phase, which is something else that people struggle a lot with, especially I think when they have a disabled child, no matter what form that disability takes, is when the children get into that phase of finding their own identity and disentangling themselves from their parent. Mm-hmm. It's so difficult, coming to terms with they're going away. They're not, they don't like doing the same things with me anymore.
But even I don't,
all of this.
Maya, I don't remember if this was in a previous podcast or just a conversation we had recently, but we were talking about, why history resonates with some people and not with others. And I've had students if it's all names and dates and they have trouble memorizing, it's a huge problem, or they love it because that's easy for them. But then you're missing the human element, which is why do we actually study history? And it's usually because it tells us something about human behaviors, or that's how I've always interpreted it and why I love it.
Well, I have one of my kids will read and take in everything and anything. They cannot be bored. You put them in a waiting room with a bunch of magazines. It really doesn't matter what they are. They're going to read them. They're going to process it. We spend a lot of time just randomly looking for YouTube educational videos, and they really love Hank Green. It's like he's on YouTube. He's the TikTok guy.
He was the YouTube guy first. I
know. Exactly. It's kind of weird. Actually, some people think that Bill Nye is the TikTok guy too. It's like, what the? No, but so I've talked about the differences, but in between, my son and my youngest are both, very even keeled. They're more. When the two of them are together, you'd never know they're autistic. They're the way they interact with each other. It's the only way they interact, neurotypically as siblings, than any of my kids. And it's only in that moment. My son does not like anybody touching him, except his younger sister. And he has a total of like 10 siblings, but amongst them all, there's two, one really young one and his younger sister. And it's just weird seeing, she interacts with him in a, they're spontaneous. There's no question of how do we do stuff. It's like all of my kids generally do parallel play. They're really not good. Board games are okay. Card, we love, flip.
Structured
Flip is our favorite thing.
Activity.
And we just got Marvel, flip. So there's heroes, there's heroes and villains. So that's a whole other thing. But there's certain things that parallel play is the more natural thing, and it's really hard to do. Interactive play. My kids, they want to be around. Their presence is their interaction. right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very much the same way. I don't necessarily need to constantly do things. I just like sometimes being near people, and I'm okay. And it's so like the neurotypicals in our life find this so difficult and so strange and so unnatural. It's like, if you're with us, participate. It's like, no, I mean,
I'm okay
like,
sitting here.
I'm
like
here. I'm present.
This is something I really try to impress with their teachers, is that, if they're in the class and they're doing the work and or in a group and they're taking it in, and when they're ready to, they'll participate. But it's the the world would be a better place if they accepted parallel play as equal to interactive play, I think. But anyways, like my kids, like there's the two middle kids, that are closest. No, they're not closest in age, but they're the middle ones of the four.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, their similarities are like, they, for most of their lives, have sharpened steel. Oh my gosh. They can't handle each other's issues. And it's the same issues. They cannot see
the parallel.
It's getting a bit better now, as they've been aging and whatnot. But oh my gosh, the things they would complain about each other. It's like I'm hearing the same thing. It's like the same thing. They're both very dramatic. They're both very engaged in things. They both have interest in only the things that they're interested in. Don't talk to them about other things. It's like, it's just like me. It's like, you can talk, but it's not going in there. They're very passionate about the things they're very passionate about. And so it's like, and I am like all of them. In some ways. And I'm not like any of them in other ways. I am, I'm an introvert, and most people find that so weird, because I can go do things. I can speak in front of many people. Where do you draw your power from? Where do you recharge? How do you recharge?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's in a dark room,
and it's alone.
with some music on, or by the lake, on my own, sitting down there. That's reading a book. These are the things this is where I draw my strength and power from. I can handle some people, but the older I get, the fewer people I can handle being around. With the exception, you put me into a room of 100 adults, and I will have a very big difficulty. Put me in a room of 100 kids, I can handle that frequency. I realize it's a frequency thing, as well as like sound. Sound for me is a huge. I need quiet, or I need the sound of thunderstorms. Like, if I get overwhelmed, I put my AirPods on and I just put the sound of creeks with the sound of thunderstorms to just center me, because I get overwhelmed. The more people I hear, I hear all of the electrical things. I hear the lights. I hear the hum of speakers that aren't plugged in, but they're still emitting some stuff. So when you put me in a room with adults, and I think it's, I've had some talks with people, so especially the male voice, one, two, three, four, they then start stacking, and the sounds that come from that becomes unsettling to me. However, you put me into a pool where you have the sound of 100 kids, it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. And for some people, it's the exact opposite, right? But
exactly.
I think it's actually, this is actually a topic that I really want to cover as well, is the challenges that you can face as a disabled parent, whether those challenges are invisible, like autism, or visible, like being a wheelchair user. The challenges that I hear about from autistic parents are very often sensory. I'm wondering what for you has been difficult.
Well, okay, so I realized the more and more I think about, I see my kids, and the more I'm self-aware. Sensory challenges have been the biggest. Visual and audio, especially auditory. I recall as a kid in school, every time there was a fire drill, I would be set off for weeks. I would be so overwhelmed. But first of all, by the sound that was happening, but then for the next week, I'd be sometimes hiding under my desk or holding my ears. And every time I would see the red fire bell, I would go and plug my ears in and run past it. Smoke detectors, the same thing. The beep beep when it was like the dee, when it was going off was petrifying. But it's when the battery was low, that sound, I would be in an anxious state no matter what else is going on. So these sounds, and I've always been affected by the hearing the sound of of lights and everything. I used to be able to hear the phone ring before it actually rang.
Wow.
Yeah, I would say, oh, phone, and what, the ring?
Yeah, that must be exhausting.
I could hear radio signals in appliances. It's just, there's so many weird things. The best thing that was that I really wish this this was invented 40 years ago when I was a little kid. I wear AirPod Pros. My sister came over 2 years ago and just said, "Hey, I just got these," and she put them in my ear because they're noise canceling. It's also like 80 to 90% of the world just nothing. Wow, it's like I could hear the conversations of people right in front of me, but everything else is blocked out. And I mean, I got myself some like right away after, and what a difference it has made. Because even the harshest sounds, they're muted. And again, like any time I get overwhelmed by going into a place like Union Station. We had a pre-talk about this. Okay, so Union Station is Toronto's main train station. It's where the trains come in. The subway is attached on one side of it, and they just did a big renovation 3 years ago. When they were in the midst of this renovation, I had a full meltdown in the middle of it. I was overwhelmed because on every surface. As they're fixing it on every surface, they've decided to put a TV screen with bright lights and constantly moving things. There's lights, there's things everywhere, and they're not in sync. And it's just like I'm talking about this right now, and there's my chest is just like so tight right now.
And it has like a low ceiling, and it's not very spacious, and there's tons of people going by, and it just feels like a box.
Exactly, like it is chaos, and trying to find directions is almost impossible. So like the lights, the sounds, and everything, and just the complete. It was different than it was the last time I was there. I have a visual memory. I need everything to stay similar to the way it looks because I map myself out. I got the way I look at the world, and this is I don't know if anybody else in the world does this. I see things in the direction I'm going, but I also see things from a topology, as if I'm walking through a map. If you were looking on Google Maps, I have a Google Maps layer display that I'm seeing at the same time I'm seeing things as I walk, and it's the same thing. Like when I go. I can give people directions based on things, not based on the street names. I can say, at this corner here, you're going to see a tree here with a rock over there. You're going to turn right, and you're going to go 2 blocks until you see a post office on the left, and it's 3 houses down from that. That's like, I do everything from. I used to own a computer store, and at one point, I needed. There's a few sales that came in, and I only had this computers in the store, so I sold them knowing that I had 1 or 2 coming in. And people were calling me during that time asking for service, and I would walk them through it without a computer, all the things they needed to do. It's just because it's a visual pattern.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, so if I'm in a grocery store and you change the aisles on me, I can't find anything. It doesn't
Hate it when they rearrange.
like it is the worst thing possible. Like moving one or a couple of things is fine. Is slight adjustments is fine. But you change a whole row and move it. You have garbage bags where dog food was, and put detergent where the garbage was, and like it's one or two things is fine, but like sometimes they do huge things. Like there was in Walmart, we used to have two aisles, then an aisle that had the middle aisle in half, so there was an island in between, and they decided to get rid of all those islands. So all of a sudden now there was just thing, and everything moved around, and I left. I left, and I couldn't continue shopping because my visual thing, move things around me in the house. Don't do that, please. I know where everything is, and I've gotten to the point where I'm not as cluttered as I used to be. But you move things on me, like you put even just changing my clothes from one place to another. Because of the accident, I have a PSW. There's not a lot of things I can do around the room. When I'm sitting at my chair here, I can do a lot because again, brain, mouth, fingers. But outside of that, it's more challenging for me. So you move things around on me. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, it's like I can't find anything. I have on my computer probably 30 different apps and 5 or 6 browsers of each probably having 40 to 60 tabs. I know everything is. Don't close it on me.
I hear you there.
Yeah. So there's sensory challenges I've given a description of me and the things that are affecting me, and everyone's different. But sensory, I look at autism is a neurodevelopmental disability, and so communication and sensory are the two things that challenge us the most
because they're unpredictable. They're both unpredictable.
Yeah, and so it's important that we, when we're talking about accommodations that need to be made for us, the invisible disabilities, we need to have organizations. I call it a culture of accommodation. We need to, not just make sure that we have, the correct accessibility symbol on the door and the button and the space inside to get through, but we need to, think about, how can we change the sensory environment? How can we change the lights, the sounds? How do we make sure that there's space and things aren't crowded? When we have events, how do we make sure that there's a room aside for people to go to just to,
decompress?
Exactly. And it's not just autistics and other neurodivergent people that experience sensory issues. We just tend to experience it at a significantly heightened amount. But everybody needs a time sometimes to decompress. Everybody needs a time just to settle. And if we start thinking about this when we're designing spaces, it's harder when we.
Hi, Mom. Sorry, Mom.
Mom's the word. It's if we start doing getting people when they're doing new things, when we're having events, when we're looking at things, especially things that are going to more likely than not have autistics or other neurodivergent people come to it. It's going to help everybody.
It is going to help everybody. And this is an interesting point and one that I keep telling schools as well, whenever they,
Me too.
will listen, is if you design an autism-friendly classroom, you're designing a child-friendly classroom.
It's going to help everybody.
If you're, and in the same vein, if you're designing an autism-friendly supermarket, you'd just be designing, a human-friendly supermarket. Because I think one of the reasons, hypothesis incoming, I think one of the reasons autistic people seem to be suffering so much more now in the last 10 years than we were in the previous 20, maybe. I think it's because society is becoming less and less human friendly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole concept of universal design is
Yes.
that we design things so that, the great majority of people are going to be able to use this. And, it's why, if you build universal design, houses and rooms and whatnot, you're helping the people that need it now, but you're also helping the people that will need it, because we know with disabilities, it's, I have a friend on my other podcast, Above and Beyond, that, disability is the single largest demographic that continually grows, and it will never stop growing, because people will, as they age, will inevitably, experience some disability. And you look at right now with long COVID, right? We have the biggest event where we have the single biggest disabling event in human history, right? It was so many people simultaneously, experiencing a disability. And we have no idea how that disability is going to play out. We have no idea how long that is, but there are some similar needs that this group of people has that other people with similar disabilities are having. And if we have a culture of accommodation, this will be less disabling, because it's these barriers that we have around us. That's, when we're accommodating, we're removing a barrier, right? When we're having a time in a grocery store, like, the first hour of every day where the lighting is dim and the music is off, we're creating a culture of accommodation. We're helping those that the autistics to be able to go. We're also helping parents with young kids be able to go, so it's not so overwhelming. Like, we're helping more people than we're seeing.
Or people with, sight or hearing disabilities.
Yeah.
It's a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
And from a classroom perspective, I mean, I just spent the whole summer talking with graduate students that our job is to expect that we will have everyone in our rooms and to plan for them so we can welcome them as they are, rather than waiting for people who are unexpected to have to say, this is what I need. We should assume and expect everyone.
Yeah. And the more we have this ingrained in us, that, like, what is inclusion? Inclusion is, it's integrate. You're present, but you're accommodated, right? And where everybody, it's only where everyone is accommodated that we have inclusion. Without accommodation, it's integration. And when we don't do it, when we don't fully accommodate, then it's easier to exclude and segregate. And it brings us back to the mess that we started with. And I know there's a heart that people want to help. They want to see it. They feel there's a cost, but really the biggest change is attitude. It doesn't cost much except your time and energy to do something slightly different. It's no more energy. It's just different. And once people can, see, the attitude within them can change, we're going to see a world that really does blossom for us. I mean, that's my hope. I might be a little bit optimistic, but
no, I'm right there with you. And I think, it's hard for people to envision things that they have never imagined or seen. And I feel like a lot of the work that we do from our various angles is helping them to understand what it can look like when everyone, I've even moved away from the word accommodated, other than explaining what it means in an educational perspective, because I say, no, these are learning tools and anyone in the room should be able to use them if it's helpful for them.
Yeah.
And we have to get to this idea that everyone has needs. Everyone needs help sometimes. So that our children, our autistic children, there's so many children who think that
parents
and autistic, everybody who feels like they're recipients of help and nobody else is. And we have to get across, there's no superiority here. Everyone needs something. It's okay to need help. You can receive help and give help. And everyone has access, should be able to have access to the things that support them.
I mean, it's like going back to what I tell my kids about, that when they're struggling with their own needs, it's that, everybody has needs. There are, every single human on this face of this planet has some areas that are challenging, and those challenging areas can be, sometimes too much for a period of time. Every one of us has needs, and
Absolutely.
We need to help and accommodate.
Everyone.
We need to live. We need to live the example, and we need to really help educate those who are around us to do the same thing. Again, I call it a culture of accommodation, because it starts with the person in the mirror, and it continues to everybody around you, and because we're human. Humans have needs, and that's why I hate the word special.
Yes.
Special education, special needs, they're human needs. We have unique needs, but they're just, we all have needs.
Yep. I went around with my teacher candidates, and we would always do like little morning check-ins and a question. And so sometimes it was like near the end of the course, it was like, what conception of normal are you learning to let go of? But we spent like maybe half an hour one day where everyone said, like, what is a brain strength? What is something that is harder for you? And what is a tool that you have learned or something that you need that helps you in that area? And it was like light bulbs going on and off, like when they realized every single person in that room had some needs, or said like, I can only remember things if I color code them, or there were so many rich examples. And I said, like, look at this neurodiversity in action. Like, you are going to have learners in your classroom. Why don't we teach these things so you don't have to wait till you're 20 to figure out that this works for you? Let's teach all of our students these things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like we're in a system that wants to focus on STEM, wants to focus on the academics, wants to focus on our value to the economy, right?
Yep.
And it's the soft skills, it's the life skills, it's the human interaction skills that are the things that matter more than everything else. And I'm glad that you're teaching a generation of educators. It's what I do with with a lot of the programs that I'm involved in helping educators and doctors. We need to let people know that their needs matter. That that it's okay to say I have a problem. It's okay to say I'm struggling. It's okay to be not okay. And we need the educators. We need caregivers. We need families. We need parents. We need to be able to be patient and stand alongside the kids and guide them to the help that once they've expressed it. It's the fear of expressing pain that really makes it harder to get through those challenging times. And we just need people. We need people around them to be able to say, "Hey, it's okay to not be okay. Let's see what we can do."
I think so. This episode is going to be a little bit longer than than our usual. But I think if we now go to the thing of the day.
Thing of the day. We should have a little like jingle. I just made one.
We should.
It's thing of the day.
Maybe for season 2.
Maddy, I'm going to record that, use that every episode now. So this is the first time that I've had a thing of the day that I haven't actually read, but it was recommended to me by my friend Bruce Petherick, who has been a guest on this podcast as well. And it is a book called How to Parent Like an Autistic by Kelly Braun Johnson, who is a late diagnosed autistic woman. And her eldest child, I believe, is autistic. And so this book gives ideas for how to support. It does talk a little bit about competing needs, although overwhelmingly, I believe the sense of the book is that because she is autistic herself, she gets and is able to accommodate for many of the things that are hard for her child. She talks about, I found an article she wrote in HuffPost about that it's really a wonderful advantage for her son to have an autistic mom. Like, she understands things like stimming, and she knows how to talk him through his own anxiety and teach things that she didn't have. Like, she knows how to support based on what she didn't get.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to read a couple of sentences from her article because I really loved it. I get that sometimes we autistics, no matter how normally articulate, lose our words. Sometimes we say yes when we mean no. I get that we get tired from social activities and may need days to recover. I'm going to skip a couple of sentences. He is free to be himself the way I wasn't until my 30s. And if it weren't for him, I may never have been given the gift of diagnosis. Allowing him to be himself, free, proud, and authentically autistic is the best gift I can give him in return.
Oh, so great.
Oh, that's awesome.
I resonate with that. I very much resonate with that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can't wait to read it. It's now on my reading list.
Oh, mine too. And I expect that I will be recommending this book to many of my clients who are parents and really need that guidance. But one thing that I think is extra good about books like these, regardless really of how well written they are, I think I expect that this probably is really well written. It sounds like she's a good writer, but is, bringing autistic voices to the forefront and letting us be the voice on how to help autistic people, because who else is going to know?
Yeah.
Who's in a better position? Yeah.
I have this dream of this. It's not a dream; it's a vision, because I want to make it happen. There's a difference between a dream and a vision. Mm-hmm. Is there to be a place where autistic parents can mentor parents of autistics, and autistics can older autistics can mentor younger autistics, because it's I've created a couple of forums. I have a forum on Facebook called Ask Autistics Ontario that is for parents to be able to just come and say, hey, my child is like this. I don't know what this means or what to do, and we who are parents can help. But the autistics can share their own experiences, and because many of us we experience some challenges when we go into autism parent groups. The biggest thing we hear all the time is, you're not like my child. Well, we're not like your child now, but we're adults. We may have been like your child then. But
you're also not like an 8-year-old.
Exactly.
Funny that.
But it is so rich when where those of us who are both parents and autistic can share with parents of autistics, because we get them. And the challenge, it is challenging to parent kids with any disability. And the more disabilities, the more complex the disabilities, the more challenging the parenting is. And parents really need supports, but they don't need an echo chamber of parents with kids with the same challenges at the same time. That was my worst experience once my son was diagnosed at 3.5. I went to 2 parent groups and I couldn't back get there again. It was just so, parents need to see the hope of the future.
Yes.
While also being grounded in the reality of the journey. And they can get that from parents who have been there, but I think that for autistic parents have a lot more to share in that respect, because of the duality of being a parent and all of the crap that can get thrown at us, as well as being autistic and understanding the experience of the child.
I think we need groups like that everywhere, locally, really. And there are so many autistic parents out there.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me that, how can you be a good parent when you're autistic? And it's the same kind of people that told me, how can you be a psychologist when you're autistic? Or how can people be autistic teachers? Like, of course you can't do people.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there are so many autistic parents out there, and most of them are probably undiagnosed.
And I mean, we know it's genetic. We're doing really well. We're sexually attractive, apparently. Like, we keep reproducing.
Exactly.
Apparently, we procreate kind of a lot.
When we're talking about neurotypes, what's your neurotype? My neurotype likes your neurotype.
No, we're out there, and we aren't perhaps the best at getting out there and putting our voices in the forefront, perhaps because we're really exhausted by living in a world that doesn't accommodate us.
Yeah.
But I think we can create and we can build the foundation for a generation of autistic people who will be less, I'm going to say the word traumatized.
Appropriate.
And therefore will be all the stronger for it.
Yeah.
And the only way we can do that is by giving them that support early on as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the foundation for everything I do. Like, that's why I get out of bed in the morning.
Now, Maddy,
I
was just going to ask, like, I know we can't generalize all the time, but what would your tips be for an autism-friendly household?
Okay. So, lots of things, lots of individual choice things to play. Things like trampolines, things to bounce, things. There are some kids that want to jump around and do. There's a lot of there's a pew. I can't do it today. Anyways, my OT friends will say, "Oh, you know the word." I know. It's patience is a thing. Be prepared. Okay. Your child will be, you will figure your child out at a particular point, and the child will change, and you need to pivot. Your child, you're going to spend all this energy, and you're like, I finally figured it. There's going to be a good pattern, and then all of a sudden the child will be very different. Be aware of that. Learn about puberty way before you hit it.
Oh, absolutely. And prepare.
Exactly. Be prepared. Like, if you have autistic girls, you're going to have, and if they have any issues with just like grooming and looking after themselves, it's going to get doubly, quadruply, quintuply, sextuply, difficult.
Yeah.
Be aware of it. Talk to other parents that have daughters that have gone through it. Maybe some of those autistic, maybe an older autistic girls might be able to help out, because it can be really, really challenging. But it's flexibility. Okay, my parenting style is that I have. There's a firm box boundary that's wide and open, and I give flexibility to the kids to do inside of that, to make some choices, to make their own things. And as they get older, the box becomes wider, so that they can make mistakes, but they're not huge consequences to them. Know the areas. Basically out of that is know what's most important that you need to do, that you want to hold on to, and be prepared to not really fight with the other things. Find what's most important to the child and find ways of encouraging that. And respite is awesome, but don't make respite therapy.
Yes.
Or don't make therapy respite. Right. The number one thing that I talked to autistics about 3 years ago, when we had hundreds of people doing a survey, and what was the most important thing that they felt would help them as a kid? Respite, getting away, doing things differently, and the therapy was generally way down on the list, but respite helps. So, and respite is great for the child, and it's great for the parent. And you need it. You do need to, you can give yourself permission to have breaks from your children, because if you don't, you will break from your children, and it's hard. So those are some of the things that, let's like 5 to 10 things in my toolbox.
I love that. That's wonderful.
Now, Kara, you promised that you were going to ask something about YA literature.
Okay. All right. So, is there a character from any of the books that you've read in this genre that you draw inspiration from?
So my favorite book of all time is Chrysalids. The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. And I mean, I love all of John Wyndham's books. The Triffids is wow. But the Chrysalids, I connected with that book. I think I read it when I was sometime between 10 and 12. And I just, it really resonated with me. And it's both of the two main characters, but I always gravitate towards female characters. It's how I've always connected with. So it's not. I like the whole concept of being different, being being different from other people, and trying to figure out how to live in a world that's different, but still be different without being caught, because it's dangerous and bad. And I love the whole being able to mind read, like talk through.
Yes.
I that book really helped me in my it's a book that I've read almost every year, at least once a year. And I've had a discussion with some YA friends of mine, that have their own podcast, and they'll probably hear this. Like, is Chrysalis YA?
Yes,
like
I was just wondering that.
Yeah, where is classic literature and where is YA? And I feel, because the protagonists are youth, it's a coming of age story. What's different? What's the difference between that and Harry Potter, which is again set in a universe where it's youth protagonists with adult figures around them. Like, where's the difference? So that's my favorite book. But I really there's basically any story where you are the protagonist is different from the rest.
Yes.
And so there's something different. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love stories about X-Men, mutants, and all that stuff.
Yeah. Because
I just actually 2 nights ago watched X-Men Apocalypse. So many people don't like that particular one, but I still resonate with it. The whole I am different from a majority of people, and I like stories that resonate and that find a path through that difference.
I love that. I think we can probably both relate.
I like that sentence, finding a path through through your difference.
Yeah.
Maybe
and wouldn't
that's
it be
a
nice
life lesson for most people?
Yeah, wouldn't it be nice if everyone could find their path?
Yeah,
absolutely. We're the human experience. If you think of neurodiversity as a ball of yarn, it takes a few autistic cats to pull it up through.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, Maddy, we are so grateful that you're able to be here with us today and share some of your wisdom. And we'll have to have you back to talk about politics and advocacy and a plethora of topics.
Yes. Absolutely. I enjoy being on podcasts, and I really much thank you for yours. When I first heard your first episode, I'm like, yeah, I really want to be on this.
Oh, wonderful.
Thank you so much. Well, we're so excited and honored that you chose to join us today. And thank you so much for all your insight.
I hope you enjoy some of the tidbits I shared.
Oh, absolutely. Autistic tidbits and